The Galactic Academy stood as a gleaming beacon of knowledge at the edge of the Orion Arm. Its crystal spires reached toward distant stars, housing students from hundreds of worlds. Inside the main hall, creatures of all forms moved between classes, some floating, some crawling, some using mechanical assistance. Principal Vorenek, a tall being with 6 eyes arranged in a circle around his head, checked his data tablet nervously. Today marked a historic first: a human student would join the academy. This could be problematic, muttered Vice Principal Ez, her membrane-covered gills fluttering with concern. Humans are classified as Deathworlders for good reason. The Galactic Council insisted, Vorenek replied. Something about improving relations with Earth. Besides, the students' test scores were exceptional. In classroom 12B, rumors spread quickly. Students clustered in nervous groups, translators buzzing as they shared what they knew about humans. They evolved on a heavy gravity world with poisonous oxygen levels, said Tlaki, a delicate creature whose translucent body glowed with bioluminescent patterns. Her thin appendages waved in agitation. I read they can regrow damaged body parts, added Mool, a fungal collective that communicated through spore bursts. And they eat other living things. Not just plants, actual animals. Dolan, whose gelatinous body contained suspended organs visible through his clear outer membrane, rippled with anxiety. Worst of all, they drink dihydrogen monoxide every day. By choice. The others gasped. Water was known throughout the galaxy as a dangerous industrial solvent. That can't be right, argued June, a scaled being with metallic feathers. June's species prided themselves on scientific accuracy. No organism could possibly. The classroom door slid open. Every student fell silent as Principal Vorenek entered, followed by a creature so ordinary-looking that many students initially thought it must be an assistant or translator. The being stood on 2 legs, had 2 arms ending in 5-fingered hands, and a head with facial features arranged in the common pattern, sensory organs at the top, communication orifice below. Its skin was a uniform shade of brown, and dark hair covered the top of its head. It wore the standard academy uniform, tailored to its bilateral symmetry. Students, Principal Vorenek announced, voice amplifier making his words echo throughout the chamber, today we welcome the first human to attend our academy. This is Tay, from the planet Earth. Please extend all courtesy as befits our institution's reputation. Tay stepped forward, movements smooth and controlled. His eyes, simple optical organs without visible enhancements, scanned the room calmly. Hello, he said, bowing slightly. I look forward to learning with you all. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the normal background hum of life support systems seemed muted. Professor Gilks, a crystalline being who taught xenobiology, broke the tension by floating forward. Welcome, human Tay. Please take any seat that accommodates your physiology. Tay nodded and walked toward an empty desk near June. His movements caused several nearby students to shift away subtly. Is this seat taken? Tay asked June politely. June's metallic feathers flattened in surprise. No. You may occupy it. Tay sat down, the chair adjusting automatically to his form. He placed a standard-issue learning tablet on the desk and waited, sitting completely still except for the rhythmic expansion of his chest, the oxygen-processing behavior humans called breathing. Professor Gilks began the lesson on interspecies communication ethics, but few students paid attention. All eyes, sensory stalks, and perception nodes were focused on the human. June, braver than most, leaned slightly toward Tay. Is it true that Earth has liquid water on its surface? Uncontained? Tay turned, his face forming what his species called a smile, a non-threatening display of teeth. Yes. Oceans cover most of our planet. I lived near one. June's scales rippled in amazement. And the gravity? We heard it's crushing. Normal for me, Tay shrugged, a uniquely human gesture. This station feels very light. I need to be careful not to jump too high. Across the room, students were using their tablets to search for information about Earth. Images of raging oceans, violent storms, and active volcanoes appeared on screens. Data about Earth's gravity, atmospheric pressure, and temperature extremes caused several students to emit sounds of distress. Yet there sat Tay, calm, polite, seeming completely harmless. It was difficult to reconcile the terrifying data with the ordinary-looking being now taking notes on interspecies ethics. The galaxy just got much more interesting, June thought, watching Tay from the corner of their visual field. And perhaps a little more dangerous. 3 days into his time at Galactic Academy, Tay sat in the common area reviewing notes on his tablet. The space was designed for multi-species comfort, with various seating options, atmosphere bubbles, and temperature zones. Despite these accommodations, most students kept their distance from the human. Except for Navi. The Proximan had appointed herself as Tay's unofficial guide, her curiosity outweighing her caution. She approached now, her tall, slender form gliding across the floor. In the dim lighting of the common area, her large eyes reflected light like mirrors. "You weren't at breakfast during third shift," Navi said, settling into a crouch beside him. "I wanted to ask more questions." Tay smiled. "I was sleeping. Humans are diurnal." Navi's head tilted, a gesture she had adopted from observing Tay. "You sleep for 8 hours consecutively? Every day?" "Yes," Tay nodded, continuing to unpack his adaptive learning tablet. "Some humans need more, some need less." Fascinating, Navi's eye membranes fluttered rapidly, her species equivalent of blinking in surprise. "On my world, we sleep in short bursts throughout the day. Nobody would waste so many continuous hours unconscious." Tay laughed. "Earth's rotation gives us a clear day-night cycle. Our bodies evolved to match it." A chime sounded, indicating the 5-minute warning before classes resumed. Tay stood, stretching his limbs. Several nearby students moved away quickly. "After classes, I need to find the exercise facility," Tay said, gathering his belongings. Navi's confusion was visible in the way her skin changed shade. "And you, exercise? Voluntarily?" "It's necessary," Tay explained patiently. "Our muscles atrophy without regular use. Especially here, in lower gravity." Navi made a sound that her translator didn't convert. "Most species develop technology to avoid physical exertion. You choose it?" Tay started walking toward his next class, Navi keeping pace beside him. "Humans find it enjoyable. Endorphins, chemicals in our brains, are released during exercise. You experience pleasure from physical stress?" Navi struggled with the concept. "Your species is more alien than I realized." In xenobiology class that afternoon, Professor Zill, a luminous being composed primarily of ionized gas contained within a transparent exoskeleton, turned the day's lesson toward adaptations to harsh environments. "Today we discuss evolutionary responses to planetary hazards," Professor Zill announced, her voice coming from a speech synthesizer at the front of the room. "Since we have a rare opportunity, I've adjusted our curriculum to examine Deathworld adaptations." Tay felt every sensory organ in the room turn toward him. "Tay, would you be willing to share some information about human healing processes? It's a subject of considerable academic interest." Tay nodded and stood. He'd expected this eventually. "What would you like to know?" "Your species lacks external protection, no shells, minimal fur. How do you survive injuries?" Tay thought about how to explain without frightening his classmates further. "We have layered defenses. Our skin is a barrier that constantly renews itself. We shed and regrow outer skin cells completely every few weeks." A murmur passed through the class. Professor Zill's exoskeleton brightened with interest. "And more severe injuries?" she prompted. "We can heal from most wounds," Tay continued. "Our blood contains cells that seal injuries and fight infection. Our immune system attacks foreign organisms. And if we break bones, they typically heal completely within weeks." The horrified silence that followed was broken only by the sound of something falling. A student in the back row had dropped their data tablet. Miro, a reptilian student with iridescent scales, raised a clawed hand. "You regrow parts of yourselves? Like some kind of self-replicating organism?" "Not entire limbs," Tay clarified quickly. though our liver can regenerate large portions if damaged. And our skin can close gaps, our muscles rebuild, our bones knit back together. The explanation didn't seem to help. Several students were making distress signals to their environmental support systems. Remarkable, Professor Zill said, her form glowing brighter with academic excitement. And all this evolved in response to Earth's conditions? Tay nodded. High gravity means falls are dangerous. Active predators meant injuries were common. We adapted to survive. Predators, squeaked a small, furry being near the front. Tay realized he'd made another mistake. Historical predators, he clarified. From our evolutionary past. Thank you, Tay, Professor Zill said. This provides excellent context for our studies. Students, please note how environmental pressures select for survival traits that may seem extreme from other perspectives. As Tay returned to his seat, he noticed the empty spaces around him had grown larger. Even June, who had shown interest yesterday, had moved to another desk cluster. Tay sighed quietly. This wasn't the first misunderstanding, and it wouldn't be the last. The notification on his tablet reminded him that physical education was scheduled for tomorrow, an event that would likely reveal even more startling human traits. He wondered how his classmates would react when they saw what a human body could really do. The gymnasium of Galactic Academy occupied an entire level of the station, divided into specialized environments for different physiological needs. Some sections had higher gravity, others lower. Some were filled with liquid or specific gas mixtures. All were designed to accommodate the vast diversity of student bodies. Today was assessment day, when new students were assigned to appropriate physical training groups. Instructor Cal, a four-armed Rigelian with battle scars visible on his leathery skin, stood at the entrance scanning his roster. His species had evolved on a high-gravity moon with twice Earth's pull, giving him a stocky, powerful build. A former military officer, he now applied that discipline to education. Next student, he called, checking his datapad. Tay, human, Earth. First Deathworlder in Academy history. Tay stepped forward from the line of waiting students. Many had been watching him nervously since he arrived. Kel's four eyes narrowed as he studied the human. Based on your measurements and species profile, you'll be an adaptive group C, low-gravity species, fragile exoskeletons, minimal cardiopulmonary output. Tay blinked in surprise. With respect, sir, I believe that's incorrect. Humans require more, intensive exercise. Several nearby students shifted backward. None had ever questioned Instructor Kel's assessments. Impossible, Kel said firmly, his lower arms crossing while his upper ones held the datapad. Your mass-to-strength ratio clearly indicates Category C placement. See here? He pointed to figures on the screen. Your muscle density is unremarkable, and your bone structure, while calcium-based, shows no exceptional load capacity. Tay took a deep breath. Our data may be misleading, sir. Earth's gravity and environmental pressures have selected for capabilities that might not be apparent in a standard scan. The equipment doesn't lie, Kel insisted. Move along to Group C area. Sir, Tay interrupted politely, standing his ground. Perhaps a demonstration would be more effective than an argument? The gymnasium quieted as students paused their activities to watch. Even Kel seemed taken aback by this challenge. A demonstration? Kel's voice carried a dangerous edge. Very well. Medium challenge assessment. We'll see where you belong. He gestured toward an obstacle course marked with yellow lights, the intermediate track designed for species from moderate gravity worlds. Students gathered along the sidelines, curiosity outweighing their fear of the human. Tay removed his outer uniform, leaving only the Academy-issued exercise clothes. He approached the starting line, looking remarkably ordinary compared to the various specialized bodies around him. Begin when ready, Kel said, activating his timer. What followed would be discussed in Academy dormitories for years to come. Tay moved with unexpected speed and grace. The first obstacle, a series of gravity-shifting platforms, he navigated without hesitation. Where other species would pause to adjust to each change in pull, Tay simply compensated with his body, never breaking stride. The climbing wall, designed to test upper body strength against variable resistance, he scaled in seconds. The balance beam over simulated acid pools caused no apparent stress. 17 seconds, announced Cal as Tay cleared the final hurdle. A new record for this course. Murmurs spread through the watching crowd. Instructor Cal's expression remained neutral, but his lower right hand twitched, a sign of surprise his species couldn't easily control. Perhaps a more appropriate challenge, Cal said, gesturing toward the red-lit advanced course. Tay completed it in 26 seconds. Strength assessment next, Cal announced, leading the way to a station with various gravity-enhanced weights and mechanical assistance suits. Here, Tay's performance became even more disturbing to the onlookers. Without using the assistance suits that most students required, he lifted weights calibrated for high-gravity species. His muscles visibly strained, but he managed loads that, according to Academy data, should have been impossible for his body type. Remarkable, Cal admitted. But strength alone doesn't determine classification. Endurance is the true measure. He pointed to the track that circled the entire gymnasium. 1 hour continuous movement. Maintain whatever pace you can. Other students being tested joined Tay at the starting line. Beings from 20 different worlds, each with their own evolutionary advantages. When Cal signaled the start, they all began moving around the track. After 15 minutes, half had dropped out. After 30 minutes, only Tay and 3 others remained, a 6-legged runner from a high-gravity world, a hovering gasbag species that floated more than ran, and a mechanical student who technically didn't need rest. At 45 minutes, only Tay and the mechanical student continued. At 60 minutes, when Cal signaled the end, Tay came to a stop. His body glistened with sweat, but his breathing, while elevated, wasn't labored. He hadn't slowed appreciably during the entire test. I could go for hours, he explained to the stunned instructor, wiping his face with a towel. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey until they collapsed from exhaustion. A collective gasp went through the watching students. A Venusian with a crystalline body structure made a high-pitched sound and then toppled backward, hitting the floor with a musical chime as they fainted. You hunt, by exhausting prey? Cal asked, all 4 arms now hanging limply at his sides. For how long? The record on Earth is over 2 days of continuous running, Tay said simply. Though that's exceptional even for humans. The silence that followed was broken only by the medical drone rushing to attend to the fallen Venusian. You'll be in Elite Group A, Cal finally said, updating his roster. And I'll need to design a specialized program. Your species is unique. Tay smiled slightly, unaware that this expression, showing teeth, made several nearby students back away further. Thank you, sir, he said. I appreciate the accommodation. News of the gym class incident spread through Galactic Academy faster than a quantum transmission. By morning, every student knew about the human's performance. Tay noticed the effects immediately as he walked to his first class. Did you see? The human didn't stop moving for over an hour. A floating gas cloud being whispered to its clustermates as Tay passed. I heard they can survive partial dismemberment, replied another student, its sensory stalks pulling back in alarm. A group of silicon-based lifeforms shifted their crystalline bodies to create more space as Tay approached. Someone said they contain corrosive acid inside their bodies, one hissed in a voice just loud enough to be heard. Tay pretended not to notice, keeping his eyes forward and his face neutral. The whispers weren't new, he'd dealt with them since arriving, but their tone had changed. Before, students had been cautiously curious. Now there was genuine fear. In quantum physics class, the teacher assigned group projects. No one volunteered to work with Tay. I'll work alone, he told the teacher quietly. It's fine. During the midday meal period, Tay entered the cafeteria and watched as conversations stopped. Students shifted away from the serving line until he had finished selecting his food, a bland protein mix designed for carbon-based organisms. Tay found an empty table and sat alone. He had expected challenges as the first human at the academy, but not this level of isolation. On Earth, he had been unremarkable, a good student, but average in most ways. Here, his normal human capabilities made him an object of fear. "Is this seat taken?" Tay looked up in surprise. June, the scaled Andromedan from his xenobiology class, stood holding a tray of shimmering liquid. Her iridescent scales caught the light, shifting through blues and purples. "No," Tay said. "Please, join me." June settled across from him, her movement fluid and graceful. "Quite a show yesterday. The training staff is still talking about it." Tay sighed. "I didn't mean to cause a scene." "They're afraid because they don't understand," June said, dipping a feeding appendage into her liquid meal. "I think it's fascinating." "What is?" "How different evolutionary paths create such varied capabilities. On my world, we evolved for efficiency and sensory perception. Your species clearly evolved for survival against all odds." Tay smiled slightly. "On Earth, I was average. Here, I'm a monster." June's scales rippled, and what Tay had learned was amusement. "Not a monster. Just different in ways that trigger instinctive fear responses. Most species here evolved to flee from dangers. Your species appears to have evolved to face them head-on." "How do you know so much about humans?" Tay asked. "I accessed the xenobiology database after your presentation." "Fascinating reading. Is it true your species deliberately consumes mild poisons for pleasure? Spicy food, I believe it's called?" Tay laughed, drawing startled looks from nearby tables. "Yes. Capsaicin triggers pain receptors, but we enjoy the sensation." "See? Fascinating." June's scales shimmered with excitement. Their conversation was interrupted when Tay's communication device chimed. A message scrolled across its surface: "Report to Dean Phobos, administration level, 1400 hours." "Trouble?" June asked. "Probably," Tay replied. Dean Phobos was a gaseous entity who maintained form through a combination of electromagnetic fields and a transparent containment suit. Her office featured accommodations for all kinds of bodies, from liquid baths to gravity adjusters. "Thank you for coming promptly," she said as Tay entered. Her voice came from a translator box at the center of her swirling form. "Please, be seated." Tay chose a standard chair, noting that the dean kept more distance than necessary between them. "I've received reports about yesterday's physical assessment," Dean Phobos began. "Your performance was unexpected." "I performed as any human would," Tay replied. "Yes, and therein lies our concern." The dean's gaseous form swirled more rapidly, indicating agitation. "Galactic Academy prides itself on providing a comfortable learning environment for all species. We're concerned about integration issues." "I haven't broken any rules," Tay pointed out. "No, you haven't," the dean acknowledged. "However, your natural capabilities are causing distress among other students. Perhaps you could downplay your physical abilities?" Tay felt a flash of anger but kept his expression calm. "You're asking me to pretend to be less than I am?" "To be considerate of others' perceptions," Dean Phobos corrected gently. "Small adjustments. Move more slowly in corridors. Avoid demonstrations of strength or endurance. Present yourself as less intimidating." Tay considered his options. Hide who he was? Or help others understand? Both paths had merits. Concealing his abilities might make integration easier in the short term. But in the long run, wouldn't that reinforce misconceptions about humans? "I'll consider your suggestions," Tay said carefully. "But I believe education works better than deception. If students fear humans because they don't understand us, perhaps more information would help, not less." Dean Phobos's gaseous form pulsed in what might have been a sigh. "A noble sentiment. But be careful. First impressions are difficult to overcome, and yours has been dramatic." As Tay left the administration level, he noticed something new. The whispers continued, but now some students watched him with interest rather than just fear. His conversation with June in the cafeteria hadn't gone unnoticed. Perhaps there was a third option, neither hiding nor confronting, but connecting. One conversation at a time. 2 weeks after the gym incident, Tay sat with June and a small group of other students in the recreational area. He was teaching them a human card game, explaining the rules with patience. Though still cautious, more students had begun approaching him, asking questions about Earth and human culture. Their gathering was interrupted by a sudden, piercing sound. Emergency klaxons blared throughout the academy, their harsh tone designed to alert species with all forms of sensory perception. Warning, containment failure in Laboratory Section 7, announced the station's computer in multiple languages. All students return to residential quarters. All emergency personnel report to Coordination Center. The recreational area erupted in movement as students hurried toward safety. Tay and June exchanged worried glances. Laboratory 7 is the zero-gravity research center, June said, her scales darkening with concern. My roommate Lynn was working there today. Tay frowned. Let's check what's happening. They moved against the flow of students, heading toward the central hub where information would be most current. There, they found Professor Zill and Dean Phobos in frantic discussion with the security team. The containment field failed during an experiment, explained the security chief, a mechanical entity with multiple sensor arrays. Toxic gases are filling the chamber. 5 students are trapped inside, unable to reach emergency suits. The environmental controls are failing, added Professor Zill, her luminous form pulsing with distress. The radiation from the experiment is interfering with backup systems. What about rescue drones? Asked Dean Phobos. The rescue drones can't function in those conditions, Professor Zill explained. The radiation is disrupting their circuits. And the automated systems won't reset for 30 minutes. The students won't survive that long, said the medical officer, checking readings on a display. Tay stepped forward. What gases are involved? The group turned, noticing him for the first time. Human, Dean Phobos began, this is an emergency situation. Please return to your quarters. I can help, Tay said firmly. Human bodies can withstand short exposure to many toxins. I checked the Academy's xenobiology database after my presentation. You have information on our tolerances. Professor Zill's form brightened. He's right. Humans have remarkable resistance to certain chemicals and radiation types. What's in the lab? Tay asked again. The security chief displayed the readings. Fluorine compounds, ozone derivatives, and low-level radiation. Fatal to most species within minutes. Tay studied the numbers. I can withstand that for short periods. I can get them out. Impossible, argued Dean Phobos. No biological entity could survive those conditions long enough to. But Tay was already moving. June, can you help me adapt an oxygen mask? I'll need to breathe, but my skin can handle brief exposure. June nodded, following him toward the emergency equipment station. Minutes later, Tay stood at the laboratory entrance. He wore a modified breather mask and minimal protective gear. A safety line attached to his waist would allow the team to pull him out if he lost consciousness. The students are in the far section, the security chief said. Their environmental suits failed. 3 minutes maximum exposure for your safety. Tay nodded and stepped through the airlock. Inside, greenish fog filled the zero-gravity environment. Floating equipment and research materials created a maze of obstacles. The acid compounds immediately began stinging his exposed skin, but Tay pushed forward, using handholds to navigate in the weightless conditions. He found the students huddled in a research alcove. 2 were unconscious, the others barely responsive. With careful movements, Tay gathered the smallest one first, securing them to his chest with emergency straps, then pushed back toward the airlock. After depositing the first student with the medical team, he returned twice more. Each time, the burning sensation on his skin intensified. By the third trip, his vision was blurring, but he located the final 2 students and pulled them to safety just as the emergency systems finally engaged, clearing the toxic atmosphere. In the medical bay, regenerative fields worked to repair Tay's chemical burns. The damage was painful but temporary, another human adaptation that had proven unexpectedly useful. To his surprise, Tay found himself surrounded by classmates. Not just June, but many students who had previously avoided him now gathered around his recovery pod. "You risked yourself for others," said Miro, the reptilian student who had once backed away from him in xenobiology class. "Why?" "Because I could," Tay replied simply. "Humans aren't just strong or durable. We're adaptable. We solve problems. We protect communities. Even non-human ones," asked a small, fuzzy being. "Especially those," Tay smiled. "On Earth, different human cultures learn to work together despite our differences. We're applying the same principle to galactic society." In the days that followed, perspectives shifted throughout the academy. Students began approaching Tay not with fear, but with curiosity. They asked questions about Earth, about humans, real questions, not based on rumors or misunderstandings. Tay found himself invited to study groups, included in social gatherings. He demonstrated not just his physical abilities, but shared human art, music, and games. The card game he had been teaching became popular in the recreation area. Professor Zill created a new xenobiology unit, Evolutionary Advantages of Deathworld Species. "Different doesn't mean dangerous," Tay explained during his presentation to a now attentive class. "Every species evolves according to their environment. Humans aren't special, we're just differently adapted. What seems frightening at first can be valuable in the right circumstances." As he looked across the classroom of alien faces, now interested rather than terrified, Tay realized that perhaps being a Deathworlder wasn't about inspiring fear, but about building bridges across the greatest distances in the universe, those of understanding. His strength, endurance, and resilience, once sources of isolation, had become the very qualities that connected him to his new community.